Now that Affinity is free, it gives us another great tool which we can use to create custom frames for Canva. Now, I've done another video on this channel that was very popular on creating custom frames using Photoshop or Photopea, so I can link that above. But now we're going to look at how we do this process in Affinity. And it really is 4 simple steps. So step 1, you create a selection around the area you want to become a frame. Then you have to convert that to a curve or a vector layer in Affinity. And then after that, we're going to set it up as a clipping mask. So we're going to clip a photo or something inside of it. So there's something inside of that vector. And then finally, we're going to export that as a PDF, and then we're going to bring it back into Canva and it'll become a custom frame. Now, the process is relatively simple, but there are a few quirks and differences depending on your starting point, some things that could maybe trip you up. So I'm going to cover it all in detail in this video to make sure you're good to go. All right, let's jump right into it. So here we are in Affinity, and we're going to use Affinity to create a custom frame for Canva. And this is why it's great that Affinity is now free, because there's just lots of extra tools, lots of extra things you can do. So as a Canva user, you should be taking advantage. If you haven't downloaded Affinity yet, I'll put a link down below in the description of this video where you can go download Affinity and get started today. Okay, so in here, I'm going to go ahead and open a new blank file. Now, if you had a shape in Canva, or it doesn't have to be like vector, it can be raster based, so it could be a picture where you just remove the background, whatever. You could start with that as your starting point, and then you'd be opening that file in here. But I'm just going to start with a totally blank project just so we can quickly go through the steps, because I know you want to know how to do this. So let's not waste any time. Let's show you the process, and then we'll go with some other different ways you can do it. Okay, but let's show you the process so you know how to do this. So I'm just going to come in here and create a new blank file. And I'm going to choose just this 1920 by 1080. This is sort of that presentation format in Canva. Now, you could choose whatever starting dimensions you were going to then use in Canva, because it kind of makes sense to use the same starting dimensions. But so I'm just going to choose this 1920 by 1080. We're going to go ahead and create this document. Now, I can have it be a transparent background. I can have it be a white background. It's not going to matter. I'll just leave the white background for now. Go ahead and create the document. Okay, so here we are. Now, inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and create some sort of shape. So I'm going to come up here. I'm just going to start with this rectangular marquee tool right here. And I'm just going to come and drag a simple rectangle out on the screen. Now it's not creating one because I have this subtract option selected. I just want to have the new option selected. So let me go ahead and try that again and drag out on screen. And I'm going to drag out just like basically a normal rectangle shape like this that fills up most of the screen. Now, obviously, you can easily add rectangular frames in Canva, change the rectangle to any size you want, so there would be no point in just creating a rectangle frame. So I'm obviously going to come in here and make some adjustments. So what I'm going to do now is I will switch from this new option up here, and I will take it over to subtract. So you have options up here that let you either add to a selection, subtract from a selection, or even one here that lets you make an intersection of your new selection and the existing selection. I'm going to put it on subtract here, and I'm just going to start to knock out some of the edges here, and I'm going to do that by switching from my rectangular marquee, use the little twirl open option, and find this freehand selection tool. Now I'm just going to come and use this and sort of make these zigzags just to make some cutouts on each side. So I'll put some cutouts there and do that again on this side here. So just coming in here and knocking this out just to make sort of an interesting shape here. So we'll do it on the bottom too as well, something like that. And so now I have this very interesting shape. And we even have some ones here that are sort of fragments, which may become a little bit of an issue, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But let's go ahead and do that for now. So that's fine for now. So I'm going to go ahead now and with that selected, I want to fill that in, but I don't actually have any layers here. So I'm going to create a new pixel layer. Come over here, create that new pixel layer. Now I have foreground and background colors here, which you can switch going forward and backwards like that. Let's see if I remember my keyboard shortcuts. Alt backspace. Yeah, so Alt backspace is going to fill with the foreground color. That's on Windows. If you were on a Mac, that would be Option backspace. And then we're going to go ahead and fill that in. So now we have these pixels on a layer, and I no longer need that marching ant selection, so I can just hit Control D to deselect it. But we have this pixel layer, and we have all of this just filled with black, just filled with the color black. But this is going to be the basis of our frame. This is basically the shape that we want to use as a frame. Now, the trick is, how do we take something now, which is just a pixel, a graphic made up of these little pixels, a raster image, how do we take that and turn it into a vector? Because that is really the trick when you want to take something back into Canva that's going to act as a frame. It can't be a raster image. It has to be a vector. So we're going to have to convert this into a vector. So how are we going to do that in here? Well, anytime you have a layer like this inside of Affinity, you can come up here under the vector menu and you can use this image trace option. Now, if I make a selection here, let me just show you that under this vector option, you'll also see this convert to curves option, but that apparently doesn't work on a raster. In some programs, I know in Photoshop, in something like Photopea, you can take a selection and easily convert it into a path and then that path into a vector path. In here, we're not going to do it exactly the same way. In here, what we're going to do is we're going to use this image trace tool. Now I'm going to turn off the selection, Control D to deselect, because you do not need to have this selected to have this work. So you just need to have this layer selected and active over here. You see the way this is blue? If I had another layer here, so I could have another layer selected here. No, I want to make sure I'm working on the pixel layer that I want to trace. So now with this, when you run image trace, you're going to convert this into a vector path. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go under vector and I'm going to do image trace. Now you're going to get this dialog box here. You can fool around with these sliders. You might see some slight adjustments here. You probably won't see too much of an adjustment, but I'm going to go ahead and move these all the way to the left. And then I'm going to go ahead and click apply. Now, when I click apply, I see that my pixel layer now says group. And if I come over here and I twirl open this group, I can see a lot of curved layers underneath here. Now this is both good and bad. So we want a curve because a curve indicates that it is a vector, but we only want one curve. We basically want one curve for the whole shape. Now what happens here is invariably with the image shape, even though we filled with a solid black color, you get all these little fragments that get turned into their own curve. And so invariably, we're going to have to do some cleanup here. Now, that is why I filled it with black initially, because if you have something that's a whole bunch of different colors, then you're going to get even more curves. However, the good news is almost always the main biggest solid shape that you started with is going to be at the very bottom of this group here. So if I come over here and go to the very bottom of this group, I could actually click on the top one here. So this first curve, and then I could go down and I could hold down the shift key and then click on the bottom one, not quite the bottom one, the second from the bottom, and it's going to select all of these curves, and then I could hit the delete key to throw them out. And we see that I'm left with mostly the main shape that I wanted. So a lot of times it's all you have to do is throw out everything but the bottommost curve, or you could drag the bottommost curve and just drag it out onto a separate layer. Let me show you that. So I'm going to hit Control Z. I could also have just come in here, grab this bottommost curve, drag it down until I see it sort of light up like this. Now it's outside of the group, and I could come in here and I could turn off that group or throw off that group, and I have this curve on its own layer. However, let me hit Control Z a couple times, let that curve go back into the group. In this instance, I do want a few of these other fragments in here. And usually, again, the biggest elements are going to be towards the very bottom of the stack. So here is the biggest element here, this curve here. But then if I look at a couple of the other elements here, let me just try to turn off the ones I want. So I want that one. I want that one. I want this one. I want that one. I want this one. This one I don't care about, so this one I can delete that one. This one here, I want that one. So I'm turning off the ones I want. This one here, I don't care about. This one here, I want that one. So every one I want now is turned off. So I'm going to delete this other one because it's still on. That means I don't want it. And so we see we just have all these little fragments, but they're making up these curves. So I'm going to shift click, select this other one here, delete that. Now we have just the curves I want, so I can turn them on. Boom, 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 boom. Now these represent the curves I want. And now with all these selected, again, select the top one, shift click to select the bottom one. Then I could come up here and I could go under vector. So this time under vector and merge curves. And it's going to merge these together. Now, you probably wonder, why didn't I just do the merge initially? Because sometimes when you have all those little fragments and you try to merge things, so it's going to affect your overall shape. It's going to sort of do some adding and subtracting, and it's not going to look quite right. So you can try that merge up front, but a lot of times you'll want to throw away some of the fragments first. Now this one curve represents the shape that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that up out of this group onto another layer, and now I have that. Now, in case you're worried that, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to spend hours cleaning up my shape every time, you're not always gonna have these little fragments here that aren't on one layer. Let me just show you what I mean. Let me just come here and let me just turn all these off for a second. So we're not selected on anything here. Let me just create a new pixel layer. Let me just grab the lasso tool. So let's make sure we're back under pixel. Find this freehand tool and draw something out like this. And again, oops, didn't work because I had subtract on. I want to start a new selection. So let's try that again. So new shape like that. Again, I'll just fill with black, Alt, backspace. And then this time, I'm going to come up here, again, do vector, image trace, and go ahead and apply. And then this time, look, we just got one curve. So sometimes you're going to have these fragments. Other times you're going to have a bunch of fragments, but the only thing you care about is the bottommost layer. So you throw out everything else. And then other times you do have to do a tiny bit of cleanup. So let's return to the one that we created. I'm going to get rid of that new group we just did. Let's come back to this curve here. So once you have your whatever shape you created converted into this one curve, then we're going to use this as a clipping mask. And this is going to be what we take back to Canva that becomes our frame. So to do that, I'm going to come up under the File menu, and I'm going to choose Place. And we're going to open up an image on my computer. So let's just go in this People folder and maybe grab this image right here. And we'll open it. So I'm going to wait for that cursor to change. And then I'm going to drag out something that goes beyond all parts of my frame. Because if you were to clip it like this, then you would lose part of your frame where you don't have pixels in there. You want, as this gets clipped, for pixels to be in every inch of your frame. So I'm going to put it like that, and then all you do to have it clipped by the curves layer is take this layer, drag it right on top of that curve layer. Boom, drop it in. Now this exists within this. And when we export this as a PDF, this is going to come into Canva as a frame. Now there's one more thing I'm going to do here. So I'm going to control click on this curves layer to load it as a selection. I'm going to go create a new pixel layer, and then once again I'm going to fill it with black, Alt, backspace. Now you may wonder why I'm doing that, and I'll tell you that in a minute. But for now, deselect, turn off this pixel layer. So with this pixel layer turned off, the only layer I'm concerned about right now is this curves layer. I'm going to go ahead and export this now as a PDF. So File, Export As, come down to this Export, Export. We're going to find PDF. It's on PNG right now. Let's make sure we go find PDF. So here's PDF. Now, you can probably choose just about any of these options. I'm going to choose PDF digital. I'm even going to do small file size because I don't care what it does to sort of the quality of the photo, because I'm going to be putting a new photo in the frame, and the frame is built on a mathematical equation. It's a vector, so it's going to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this. There are other settings over here, but I think most of these aren't going to matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Export, and then pay attention to where you're saving it. So I'm going to put it into this custom frame testing folder, and I will call this one frame 003, and I'll go ahead and save that. Now we're going to import that into Canva and see if we do indeed have a frame. And I'll come back to this black layer that I created just a minute, because I'm going to explain why I did that as well. All right, so here we are back in Canva. I'll just create a new presentation. We're going to go under that Uploads tab. So we're going to go into Uploads, and then here's where I'm going to find that frame. So remember, we call this one frame 003. It's a PDF, but when I open it, we're going to see when we check this PDF out, this is actually going to be a frame. So I can click now to add it to my screen. Now, if I come over here and we take a look at it, well, notice the pixel's blurry. Remember, I chose low quality, but we don't care because we don't care about that picture, because we're just going to detach that image. Go ahead and delete that, and we see, yes, we do have this frame. Now, if we actually look at our layers, we actually have a black layer behind it. Now, remember, I created a black layer before we left. I said I'm going to come back and tell you about it. This is not actually this layer. This is the mask layer. So when you have a clipping mask like that, that's going to get brought in here too. So I'll talk about that in a minute and why I created that extra black layer, which we haven't done anything about. But for now, let me just move this back and let's just show you that this is a frame. So I'm going to just do something like, I'm going to type model in here just so we get some good quality shots of people here. We'll do see all. And then let's just start to drag a few of these in that we see, yes, this works as a frame. Obviously, the quality of these images is fine. This scales up and down just fine. We're not losing quality. So that's very good. Everything's working as it should. Now, let's get to that black layer. The reason why I created that black layer is because sometimes I like to bring in a drop shadow that matches the shape of the frame. So if I went to this layer just behind here and I wanted to sort of blur this layer, the problem is, let me just bring it to the front so we can see it better. The problem is, there is a problem in Canva here where when something meets the bounds, so we can see the bounds fit tightly around this shape here. So if I come in here and I go to edit and I use this little blur trick, this little blur tool in here, the problem is it's going to look really funky and it's going to have these harsh edges, right? We don't want that. So let's just throw that away. So let's go ahead and bring this frame back to the center. I'm going to go ahead and sometimes you might want to add some other elements to go along with your frame. So let's just go under the Elements tab. We're just going to search for frame itself. So frame, boom, not this kind of frame. So turn off photos, get this frame here. Let's make this extend across the full screen. And let's make this extend downward like this. Then we're going to drop it to the back. So we're going to use that bracket key shortcut to move it to the back. Then I can put anything I want into here. So let me just come under here. Let's see what I recently used. I like this texture here. So let's bring this texture here. Now suddenly the frame itself, I'm going to center it. Maybe we'll drop the opacity a little bit. So we're bringing just a little bit of that texture in. So this looks pretty cool. But if I wanted to sort of give it more of a 3D look and have a drop shadow behind it, that's where I'm going to go back to Affinity, and that's where I'm going to bring back that final black shape. So I'm going to do that now. So here we are back in Affinity, and we have this top layer, which is just a pixel layer. So I'll turn off the curves group, and we just have this pixel layer. Now, I do have this white background, which I do not want. Sometimes when you launch an Affinity project, by default, it gives you this white background. However, you can get back into document setup, and you can adjust this. So if I just go under document here, and I come down under setup and choose document setup, then I can come in here and I can actually bring back that transparent. So transparent background, yes, I want that. So I'm going to turn that on, go ahead and click OK. Now we have the transparent background, which is what I want because I'm going to export this as a PNG with transparency. Now the important thing to note is because I have this with some room around the margins, around the edges, that's going to exist when I bring it back into Canva. The bounds aren't going to be snug up against it like we saw with the layer that got auto imported. When we bring this in with this space here, we're going to maintain this space around the edges. That means we're going to be able to do a blur in Canva and it's going to look fine. You also could blur it here and just export it as a blur, but you can do the blur within Canva as well. Either way you want to do it. So just to show you, we could just blur it here. I could come up here and come under pixel, and I could come under filters and I could choose blur and I could choose Gaussian blur, and we could go ahead and bring it over and take it back like that. That's fine. But we can also do it with Canva, and I want to show you how, because we have the margin, the Canva blur tool isn't going to mess it up. So we'll go ahead and export it like this. That way, if we wanted it to stay solid and not blurred, we could keep it that way. So let's go File. This time we're going to export. But of course, this time we're going to export as a PNG. So PNG, it should maintain the transparency. If we look closely, we can see, yes, it has those transparent edges. So we're going to go ahead and export this. So I'll go ahead and export, same location. I'm going to call this frame 03, and I'm just going to call it shadow or something like that, since we're going to use this for a shadow. Now I'm going to jump back over into Canva and import this as well. So here we are back in Canva. I'll just go under that Uploads tab. Again, we're going to upload those files. This time I'm going to bring in the shadow. We'll go ahead and open it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and just click over here to get it the size on the screen. Now, as I drag this, it's going to want to snap into one of my frames. So if you want to prevent that, hold down the Control or the Command key as you drag, and it's no longer going to snap to the frame. So holding down that Control or Command key, that's your trick for getting it to not sort of just snap to the frame. So I'm going to size it out to maybe something like this, and then maybe position it a little bit offset like that. And then of course I want to move this back in between these two layers. And now if I come in here and we go under the edit option, and again we're going to choose this blur option, whole image, and we're going to blur it out to something that looks good like that. And then we'll go back, and so now suddenly we have that drop shadow. And of course we can still come in here and adjust how much we want that drop shadow to show. Okay, so very easy, just like that. We have this custom frame in Canva. Of course, you can come in here and you can find different elements, drag in different elements. This is a fully working frame. You can bring in other supporting elements if you want, add to your design, but it's just very cool to be able to take any shape you want and turn it into a custom frame. Now let me come back into Affinity here and let me go through one more example, because I see people creating text frames all the time in Canva where they drag out those pre-made individual letter frames and they have to do it for each letter, and then they put the picture in each letter and then they resize and reposition the picture in each letter, and it's just an easier way. So let's just create a text-based frame here in Affinity. So I'm going to switch over from pixel to vector. And it doesn't really matter yet because I'm using this artistic text tool, which you'll find under the pixel menu as well. But I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and let's just grab out a letter. And then I'm going to type something like surfing, and I've chosen Oswald bold, so you can change to whatever font you want. I want a nice thick font, so I'm using this Oswald font, and I'm going to type something like surfing. And I want to scale this up, so let me grab my selection tool up here, my move tool. Let's make this bigger. Let's reposition it so it's sort of in the center. Now I also want to work on the spacing here. So if you're working with text like this and you come under this text menu here, you have a spacing option, and you'll notice that you can tighten it using Alt left, loosen Alt right. Okay, so let's just try that. Let me just click on this and let's go Alt left and then Alt right. So this is how we can come in here and work on our spacing. So I actually like it with some of the letters blending together, but I don't want to use those lose those center letters. So you actually can put your cursor in between individual letters. So the S and U, I don't mind them going to together like that, but then I'm going to add a little space in between these two letters. And then again, the R and the F are okay together, but I want to add some space between the F and the I. So maybe something like that. And then the I sort of want separate from the N and the G. So let me add a little spacing there. So anyways, you can come in here and you can sort of tighten or loosen the spacing in between individual letters, as well as doing it for the word as a whole. So then I'm going to come in here. Let's grab that move tool again. Let's make sure we're clicked on the surfing layer. Let's grab this here and let's just resize it up again so it's something like this. Now what we want to do is we want to convert this to curves. So previously, starting with a pixel-based object or a pixel-based image, like we did with the first example, we had to use that live trace option. Well, text itself, you'll notice it doesn't have this pixel icon. It's already sort of based on curves. So we don't have to use this pixel option. We don't have to use the live trace option. Instead, what we can do is go under the vector menu. And this time, we'll notice that we do have this convert to curves option with text. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that now. If I twirl this open, you'll see that each letter here became its own layer, so its own curve layer. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these layers, and then we actually want to merge them all together. So again, under the vector menu, and this time I'm going to come down and merge curves, and now suddenly we see how they're collapsed all into one layer. So take that one layer, I'm just going to bump it up on its own layer here up top. So now we have this curves layer here. I can turn off the group behind it. And now we could do the same thing where we bring in an image. So let's go File, let's go Place. I'm going to grab any image from this people folder here. So this one here is fine. Let's go ahead and bring it in. We'll place it so I make sure it's going to extend beyond this entire text here. That's good. And then we're just going to drop it right on that curves layer so it becomes a mask. And then this is what we want to take back to Canva. So from here, same thing. We're just going to go File, down to Export. And this time, no longer a PNG. We're going back to PDF. So I'm going to come down to PDF, choose this PDF option, Export. And we'll go ahead and save this. And so back in my frame folder here, and we're going to call this one Surfing Frame. And then I'll bring this into Canva and we'll see what we have. All right, here we are back in Canva. Let's just go back under Uploads. We'll find that surfing frame. So right here, surfing frame, we'll go ahead and bring that in. Let's go ahead and create a new page. So we have somewhere to put that. We'll drop it on the new page. Come in here, once again, detach image. And now we have a new frame. Again, we can get rid of that layer behind it if we don't want that. We have the frame here, and come in here and go ahead under the Elements tab. Let's drop something into this. So actually, let's search for surfing and let's find something to drop in there. An actual surfing image would make sense, wouldn't it? So let's grab something here. Let's throw it in there. And then also I want to point out, if we double click on this, we can see that we can still see the bounds of the photo. So let's come in here and let's take it so the bounds of the photo start at the upper left of the document like this, and then scroll down and hit the far side like that. That way I'm going to be able to line it up if I were to use this image again in a different frame. So let me just come in here and add another frame. So back under here, let's find recent elements. Let's grab this one here. Let's put that in the top left corner, drag it out, something like that. We'll put that same image in here, and again, let's make sure it's positioned starting right at the top left like that. Go ahead, that way it's going to line up. Then we'll take the position of that one, we'll drop it behind the surfing frame. Can't really tell yet, but then let's come in here on this surfing one here and apply some sort of treatment, maybe some filter here, so something like this, and then suddenly, boom, we're seeing that effect of that frame. Now obviously we're just scratching the surface of what you can do, because you can layer different things together, but I just wanted to show you how it's not hard to create your own custom frames for Canva. You can start with shapes, you can start with photos, you can start with a vector, you can start with a raster, you can start with text. You have lots and lots of options. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope this helps you understand the process of creating a custom frame for Canva with Affinity. If you like tutorials like this, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below, and let me know in the comments, have you ever tried creating a custom frame for Canva before? Do you use Affinity? What do you use? I'd love to hear that as well. Again, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions at all, just drop those in the comments as well, and I'll be happy to help. Thanks again. See you soon.
Everything I do, so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move, so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.